Welcome back. Okay, today we have a really fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're going to completely and objectively unpack a highly charged, recently viral video from Spencer Pratt titled, "I Didn't Get Cheated, You Did." Now, whether you follow local politics closely or you're just trying to make sense of your daily news feed, understanding exactly how these kinds of arguments are constructed is honestly a masterclass in rhetorical strategy. It really changes how you consume media. So we're going strictly by the source material today. We're setting aside all the outside noise to systematically break down what he is claiming step by step. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the election night shift. Second, allegations of ballot harvesting. Third, the bank vault metaphor. And finally, gathering evidence for action.
Starting right off with Section 1, the election night shift.
So, according to the source, this whole narrative kicks off on election night. The speaker claims he was absolutely dominating the race. He says he had roughly a 40,000 vote lead, which is about a 10 percentage point advantage, over his opponent, Nithya Raman. He claims he completely smashed both the in-person and the mail-in ballots initially. But fast forward 7 days, as the county continued to accept and count mail-in ballots, he says that entire deficit was erased, and Raman actually moved ahead by roughly 3,000 votes.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exact net vote swing, going from a 40,000 vote lead to a 3,000 vote deficit. Well, that's a swing of exactly 43,000 votes. And the speaker zeroes right in on this number, claiming it correlates perfectly to the local homeless population living on the streets of LA. Think about why this matters rhetorically for a second. By tying a massive abstract data point directly to a highly visible visceral local issue, it's a deliberate tactic to suggest this is far more than just a coincidence.
Now let's step back for a second. Political analysts and election officials actually have a standard explanation for these kinds of late shifts. It's known as the red mirage. This is a pretty well-documented historical phenomenon in national voting, where early in-person vote counts typically favor Republicans, making it look like they have this strong, insurmountable lead. But as mail-in ballots, which historically favor Democrats, are tallied later in the evening and into the following days, that lead just vanishes. The video addresses this concept directly, but the speaker unequivocally rejects it as the explanation for his specific race.
Right, so the speaker just isn't buying that conventional wisdom, and here's why. First, he points out that there were actually 2 Democrats in this race, yet he claims only the third-place candidate, the one who desperately needed those votes to catch up, saw this disproportionate late spike. Second, he argues against the standard narrative by claiming that multiple studies actually show mail-in voting provides no inherent advantage to either party. And finally, he asserts that any forensic accountant looking at this kind of statistical anomaly wouldn't just shrug it off as normal voting trends. They would view it directly as evidence of fraud.
Which brings us to Section 2, allegations of ballot harvesting.
Here, he lays out what he claims is a massive systemic vulnerability in signature verification. While we're told computers check these signatures, he points out a specific and frankly surprising loophole. Step 1, if a voter cannot sign, they can just make a mark. He says it could be an X, a scribble, or literally even a happy face. Step 2, a witness then simply signs off on their behalf. And step 3, and this is the absolute core of his mechanical critique, once that ballot is approved and separated from its envelope, it becomes entirely untraceable. He argues that if a sudden, massive batch of votes swings an election, there is zero physical way to trace those ballots back to see if they all had a happy face in the signature box. To really drive this home, he draws a super sharp contrast between 2 very different environments. On one hand, you have the official LA County Ballot Center. Interestingly, the speaker actually concedes that the workers there are doing a flawless job, counting with robotic precision. But, he says, they're just blindly counting both legal and illegal ballots equally. Why? Because according to him, the actual crime happens long before the ballots ever get there. He points straight to Skid Row, describing it as wide open to fraud, alleging that homeless individuals are being paid $2 for their votes in an illegal ballot harvesting scheme.
And the language he uses to describe all of this is, well, it's highly stylized and aggressive. Take a look at this direct quote from the source. It doesn't matter if it's a drug zombie being paid for their ballot or a blue-haired intern at an NGO filling out the ballots. He actively frames NGOs like the Democratic Socialists of America as direct participants in modern-era fraud, where the food doesn't even matter anymore, only the ballot itself.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the bank vault metaphor. And this brilliantly illustrates his core legal argument.
He essentially compares the California election system to a bank heist. He acknowledges that sure, robbing the bank, meaning committing voter fraud, is still 100% illegal on the books. However, he argues the state has systematically removed all the actual mechanisms to catch or prevent it. He says it's as if they passed a law saying you cannot lock the bank vault, you're banned from installing security cameras, and you are strictly prohibited from even counting the money inside to see if any was stolen in the first place.
He then paints a picture of a rigged system through a really stark contrast. On one side, he lists actions he claims go largely unprosecuted in California right now, like looting up to $950 in merchandise or knowingly infecting someone with HIV. But on the flip side, he claims the one thing that absolutely will get you swiftly prosecuted is trying to actively prevent vote fraud. It's a rhetorical technique designed to show a justice system whose priorities, at least in his view, are entirely inverted, to protect the House, kind of like a casino.
To back up this claim of deliberate systemic protection, he isolates a very specific timeline regarding the governor. The speaker points out that just 5 days before his election, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law that allegedly bans federal and independent authorities from investigating or monitoring for vote fraud during the active counting process. The speaker argues this timing wasn't an accident. He claims it was highly deliberate, done so close to Election Day that the courts wouldn't even have time to overturn it, essentially blinding the security cameras while the vault was wide open.
Finally, Section 4, Gathering Evidence for Action.
So, the crucial point we need to take away from this final section is this. He is actively telling his audience not to protest. He states very clearly that doing protests, going to rallies, or storming a ballot processing center simply won't achieve anything. Instead, he insists the only viable solution is quiet, behind-the-scenes evidence collection. He wants his supporters to gather hard proof to hand directly over to criminal investigators so that the alleged fraudsters can actually face real, tangible charges.
And here are the concrete steps he claims to have taken to do just that, basically shifting his own role from a politician to an active investigator. First, he flatly refuses to demand a recount, arguing that recounting anonymous ballots 100 times is just going to yield the same fraudulent result. Instead, immediately after that late vote spike, he says he sent a team directly down to Skid Row to record video evidence of people admitting they were paid for their votes. In fact, he claims it was his evidence that prompted a sudden descent of 20 FBI agents onto Skid Row to investigate. His stated goal here is singular: seeing people catch charges.
At this point, he accepts that his own political campaign is over. He summarizes his ultimate objective with this pretty intense final quote. "If I have to be the kamikaze pilot to finally get this fix, so be it. It ends with commie animals in handcuffs." He genuinely views himself as sacrificing his own campaign to expose the underlying system, taking the hit right now to ensure future elections are secure and future prosecutions are an absolute certainty.
So, we've unpacked the data claims, the mechanical allegations, the systemic metaphors, and this really unique call to action, which leaves us with a profound question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. If political figures start shifting their focus away from public protests and standard ballot recounts and instead move toward private evidence gathering aimed strictly at criminal investigations, what does this actually mean for the future of election integrity debates? It is a major shift in tactics, one that could change the entire landscape of how we discuss and challenge our electoral systems. Thank you so much for joining me for this structured breakdown. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.